141 pages. This is China's brand new 5-year plan, passed 3 weeks ago. I searched for one word. Just one. Lithography machine, the only tool that can manufacture advanced chips, the thing Washington has been fighting over for years. Result: not found. I searched wafer fab. Not found. Semiconductor manufacturing. Not found. 141 pages, outlining the future of the world's second-largest economy, and the entire vocabulary of the chip war does not exist in it. Not once. While Washington has been debating chips, who makes them, who sells them, who gets to ban them, the average American household is already paying $1,200 to $2,000 extra every single year because of this fight. That's not a projection. That's a verified figure from the Yale Budget Lab. It's happening right now, in your grocery cart, in your Amazon orders, in your utility bills. And Beijing knows that. They're betting that America keeps paying while China quietly moved to a completely different battlefield. But here's what I actually found when I read carefully. A 4-character term that has never appeared in any 5-year plan in Chinese history. Mosin Yunying. Model, chip, cloud, application. Not about making chips, about deploying them inside a completely new architecture. I cross-referenced this with the Diplomat's primary source analysis from March 2026. They read the same document, reached the same conclusion. This is not the language of a country trying to catch up. This is the language of a country that has changed the game entirely. Here is the raw keyword count from the original 141-page document. AI appears more than integrated circuits at a ratio of 13:1. Not 2:1, not 5:1, 13:1. Computing power gets its own dedicated chapter for the first time in 5-year plan history, and the 70% chip self-sufficiency target from Made in China 2025, the target China catastrophically failed, missing it by 50 percentage points, has been deleted. Not delayed, not revised, deleted. Completely gone from the new plan. 2015. China announces the most ambitious industrial target in their history. 10 years. Every national resource pointed at one goal. The result? They missed it by 50 percentage points. But Beijing's response wasn't to try harder. It was to change what they're measuring entirely. They stopped counting how many chips they produce. They started counting how many people are running on their infrastructure. That is the difference between a factory and a platform. And once you understand that difference, the next number I'm about to show you will completely change how you read economic news. 4.5 billion people. That is the population of the global south, countries with no AI infrastructure, no cloud provider, no functioning digital payment system, and China is building all of that for them right now. Not in the future. The diplomat confirmed it. Offshore AI computing facilities already deployed in Malaysia, a Belt and Road AI platform already running, a new international AI organization being proposed with no American seat at the table. When 4.5 billion people are running on Huawei Cloud, Alibaba AI, and paying in digital yuan, who needs AWS? Who needs the dollar? That is the question I'm going to answer in the next 27 minutes. To understand what China is actually doing, you need to understand a 45-year-old trap. In 1978, Deng Xiaoping made a decision that would define everything that followed. Open the economy. Let foreign companies in. Let them build factories. Let them bring technology. The logic was simple. Use cheap labor to attract foreign investment. Use foreign investment to learn how things are made, then make them yourself. For 30 years, that plan worked perfectly. China went from making plastic toys to making smartphones, from assembling components to designing them. The trap hadn't closed yet. During the 14th 5-year plan alone, just the last 5 years, China attracted $708 billion in foreign direct investment. They hit that target 6 months ahead of schedule. 58 million private enterprises registered. Those are the official numbers from China's National Development and Reform Commission. But here's what those numbers don't tell you. A significant portion of that foreign investment came in to teach China how to build things China would eventually make without them. The students had been paying very close attention. Then 2018 happened. Washington finally realized what had been building for 2 decades, and they started closing the doors. First the chips, then the machines that make chips, then the people who know how to make those machines. 3 layers of restrictions, each one tighter than the last. And here is where the story gets counterintuitive. George Magnus, research associate at Oxford University's China Center, called the sanctions something unexpected. Not a weapon, an accelerant. Because the moment America said, "You cannot have this," China stopped asking permission. I want to show you something that stopped me mid-research. George Magnus, research associate at Oxford University's China Center, literally wrote the book arguing that Xi's China is in jeopardy. His entire thesis is that China's model is failing. He is one of the most credible China skeptics in Western academia. And even he describes the sanctions as functioning like an accelerant on China's domestic innovation drive. When the person whose entire career is built on arguing China is failing agrees with Beijing on one specific point, that external pressure accelerated internal mobilization, that point is probably worth taking seriously. Your harshest critic conceding a single argument is stronger evidence than your supporters agreeing with everything. After the sanctions hit, China's total R&D expenditure surged nearly 50% in 4 years, from $378 billion to $567 billion. R&D as a share of GDP reached 2.68%, beating their own target of 2.5%. Those figures come directly from China's National Development and Reform Commission. The sanctions didn't weaken China's technology ambition. They funded it politically. Xi Jinping now had a domestic justification for mobilizing every resource toward one goal that no Chinese leader had ever had before. So Beijing faced a choice. Keep fighting the chip war, pouring money into a battle where the outcome is uncertain and the timeline is 10 to 15 years away at best. Or accept the chip loss as the cost of admission and redirect everything toward a layer of the technology stack that America hasn't locked down yet. A layer where China already has massive advantages. A layer that, and this is the part Washington hasn't fully processed, controls everything the chips run on. They chose Path B, and they chose it clearly enough to delete Path A from their national plan entirely. Here is the architecture China is now operating on. 4 layers. Layer 1. Fabrication, physically making chips. America locked this. China accepts it for now. Layer 2. Chip design. Still contested. Layer 3. Computing infrastructure, the cloud systems, the data centers, the networks that chips run inside. This is where China is betting everything. Layer 4. AI application deployment, putting AI into the hands of billions of people. The insight that nobody in Washington seems to be acting on. You don't need to win Layer 1 if you own Layers 3 and 4. And the proof that this isn't theory, it's already happening. The Diplomat's primary source analysis found something that should be in every major newspaper. China is already deploying offshore AI computing facilities in Malaysia. Why Malaysia specifically? Because China's own Ministry of Commerce has mapped every country in the world by whether they have foreign investment security reviews. Malaysia has none. The plan is being executed in the gaps of American policy, in the places where US export controls simply don't reach. Keep that in mind. Welcome back. Before the break, I showed you the 4-layer architecture. China accepted defeat at Layer 1 chip fabrication. Now I want to show you exactly what winning at Layers 3 and 4 actually looks like in practice. Because this is where the 13-to-1 ratio starts making sense. AI appears in this plan 13 times more than chip manufacturing. That's not an accident. That's a resource allocation signal. Every dollar, every engineer, every state-owned enterprise pointed at the layers America hasn't locked. Here is what Mosin Yunying actually means in practice. Model the AI itself. Chip the hardware, constrained but functional. Cloud the infrastructure, distributing it at scale. Application, the end deployment. The genius of this architecture is what happens at the chip layer. Yes, China's chips are inferior to Nvidia's best. But DeepSeek proved in early 2025 that you can build frontier AI capability with constrained hardware. China didn't need the best chip. They needed a chip good enough and a cloud layer efficient enough to compensate. That changes everything about how you assess this competition. January 27, 2025, Nvidia loses $596 billion in market capitalization in a single trading day, the largest single-day loss for any company in the history of the stock market. The cause: DeepSeek demonstrated frontier AI capability that Wall Street didn't think was possible without America's best chips. Here is the part that should be in every policy briefing in Washington. DeepSeek was not built with Nvidia's restricted H100 chips. It was built with the H800, the chip that American export control officials decided was not advanced enough to warrant restriction. The chip America looked at and said, "This isn't dangerous enough to block," was dangerous enough to erase $596 billion in American market value in 24 hours. That is not a technology story. That is a policy failure story. 4.5 billion people with no AI infrastructure, no cloud provider, no digital payment system that works reliably across borders. China is offering all of it: the infrastructure, the cloud, the AI models, the payment rails, and the price is not money, at least not upfront. The price is data. The price is adopting Chinese technical standards instead of American ones. The price is settling trade in yuan instead of dollars. For governments that have been told for decades that Western infrastructure comes with conditions China's offer looks very different. That's the market Washington is losing right now. I want you to think about this through a historical lens. At 1995, the United States controlled the backbone infrastructure of the early internet, not because of military force, because they built it first and everyone else plugged in. That infrastructure advantage translated directly into 30 years of American dominance over global digital norms, privacy standards, content rules, payment systems, surveillance architecture. Now run that same logic forward to 2026. Whoever builds the AI infrastructure backbone for the developing world will shape how AI is governed, how data flows, and how digital payments work for the next 30 years. That race is happening right now, and most Americans have no idea. Let me bring this back to your wallet specifically. Yale Budget Lab has verified the average American household is already paying $1,200 to $2,000 extra per year from current tariffs alone. That's your grocery bill, your Amazon orders, your utility costs. But here's the second-order effect that hasn't hit yet. If China successfully captures AI infrastructure for 4.5 billion people, US tech companies lose access to the fastest-growing markets on Earth. Nvidia, Google, Amazon Web Services, their growth stories depend on global expansion. When that expansion gets blocked by a parallel Chinese ecosystem, those stocks in your 401k start telling a very different story. Here is a number that JP Morgan published in their tariff analysis that almost nobody is talking about in plain English. The tariffs on Chinese goods generated approximately $130 billion in revenue for the US Treasury in 2025. That sounds like America winning, China being punished. But here is what that number actually means. American consumers and businesses paid $130 billion in what is functionally a tax on goods they bought anyway, because there is no American-made alternative. The tariff is not punishing China for selling things Americans want. It is taxing Americans for the failure to build domestic alternatives over the last 30 years. That $130 billion did not come from Beijing. It came from your purchases. But here is the paradox that China's own economists cannot explain away. While China is running a record $1.19 trillion trade surplus, the largest in the history of any nation, Chinese households are not spending. Consumer Confidence Index has been stuck at 86 for 3 consecutive years. The peak was 200 in 2021. Household consumption is 40% of GDP. In the United States, it's 70%. Dual circulation, Xi Jinping's signature economic strategy to build domestic demand, is quietly failing, and the 15th five-year plan does not have a clear answer for why Chinese people won't open their wallets. And this is the dimension almost no one is connecting to the 5-year plan. South China Morning Post found it, an entire section on what the plan calls extreme contingencies, a specific plan to relocate strategic industries deep into China's interior, away from the coast, away from ports. Why? Because 80% of China's oil imports travel through the Strait of Malacca. One strait, one choke point. If the US Navy closes that strait, in a conflict scenario, China's entire industrial economy could collapse within months. The 15th Five-Year Plan is not just a technology document, it is a national survival document. Food, self-sufficiency, domestic energy production, interior industrial zones. These aren't coincidences scattered across different chapters. They are a single coherent strategy written for a world where the United States decides to use every economic lever it has. Beijing is not assuming conflict is inevitable, but they are preparing for it specifically enough to put it in writing. That level of preparation tells you something about how they read the current moment. Hold that thought. Welcome back. I want to start this section with something that stopped me cold when I first found it. In 141 pages of China's National Economic Plan, the document that defines every major government priority for the next 5 years, the United States is not mentioned once. Not once. Neither is decoupling. Neither is any American company. No Apple, no Google, no Nvidia. But here's what is in the document. 3 specific phrases in the National Security chapter: Fan Jizai counter, sanctions; Fan Ganyu counter, interference; Fan Changbi Guanxia, counter long-arm jurisdiction. Those 3 phrases map precisely to the 3 primary tools of American economic coercion. Beijing doesn't need to name the enemy. They've prepared specifically for every weapon in the arsenal. Now let me connect every thread we've covered. Node 1. China failed at chip manufacturing and deleted the target rather than chase it. That feeds directly into Node 2, the Mosin Yunying architecture designed to make chip inferiority strategically irrelevant. That architecture enables Node 3, AI infrastructure deployment across the global south. That deployment creates the conditions for Node 4, digital yuan and alternative payment rails, trade that bypasses SWIFT and dollar settlement entirely, and the legal framework protecting all of it is Node 5. 3 specific countermeasures written directly into national law. This is not 5 separate policies. This is one strategy with 5 execution layers. I want to show you exactly where this synthesis comes from. The Diplomat's March 2026 analysis identified something that current US export controls do not address. Controls target the fabrication layer, Layer 1, but the 15th Five-Year Plan describes a 4-layer architecture. Controls on Layer 1 leave Layers 2, 3, and 4 operating without equivalent countermeasures. The computing infrastructure is being built domestically. Deployment is already happening in Southeast Asia. The military-civil fusion mandate is explicit written into the plan, and the software ecosystem which China's own industry identifies as their binding constraint remains the one layer US policy has not targeted. I want to show you one sentence from the 15th Five-Year Plan that I cannot stop thinking about. In the section on international strategy, the document states China will actively participate in the formulation of international rules for artificial intelligence. That sentence is 17 words, but those 17 words, if executed, mean that the laws governing how AI operates globally will be written in Beijing, not Washington. Not the chips, not the cloud, not the data centers, the rules. Here is the historical parallel that makes this concrete. In 1944, at Bretton Woods, the United States wrote the rules for the post-war global financial system. Those 17 words shaped every financial decision made on Earth for the next 80 years. China just put their version of those 17 words into their national plan. Washington has not responded with an equivalent document, so let me state the contrarian thesis as clearly as I can. Most people think China is losing the tech war because the media shows a GDP slowdown, a chip gap, a failing property sector. But when you analyze the primary source document, the actual 141 pages, you find something different. China's sanctions accelerated their R&D by 50%. Their chip failure redirected resources toward infrastructure deployment. That infrastructure is being built across 80 countries, and the success metric has been redesigned to measure something America cannot sanction: how many people are dependent on Chinese systems. The real winner in the short term isn't China or America, it's the global South getting infrastructure built for free. And the real loser, if Washington keeps fighting the wrong war, might be every American with a 401k, a smartphone, and a grocery bill. Before we talk about the future, I need to stop here, because everything we've covered in the last 18 minutes has been about strategy, architecture, data, policy. But behind every one of those numbers is a real person living inside this plan, not as a strategic asset, not as a data point, but as a human being trying to pay rent, find a job, and feel secure about tomorrow. And the picture those people are living right now is very different from the picture Beijing is projecting to the world. In 2023, a 24-year-old software engineering graduate in Shenzhen, his LinkedIn profile lists his name as Wei, graduated from one of China's top technical universities. He spent 6 months applying to 47 companies. He received 2 interviews, 0 offers. His parents had taken out a mortgage at peak prices in 2021 to fund his education and set up the family's future. That apartment is now worth 40% less than what they paid. Wei is currently working a delivery job. I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for Wei. I'm telling you because Wei, multiplied by the 11.58 million graduates who entered the Chinese job market in 2023 alone, is the precise reason dual circulation is failing. You cannot build domestic consumer demand when the people who are supposed to become consumers cannot find jobs. And no 5-year plan has a policy tool for restoring the confidence of a generation that started their adult lives feeling left behind. This is the paradox at the heart of the 15th 5-year plan that no analyst can fully resolve. China is building AI infrastructure for 4.5 billion people across the developing world. Simultaneously, 1.4 billion of their own people won't open their wallets. The government is betting that AI productivity gains will eventually lift household income enough to fix consumer confidence. Maybe, but productivity gains take years to reach ordinary households, and confidence, once broken by a property crash and a pandemic, doesn't come back on a policy schedule. The person arranging fruit at that market doesn't care about Mosin Yunying. They care about whether anyone is going to buy it. And that unanswered question, can you become a technological superpower while your own population is economically afraid, is the single most important variable in every scenario I'm about to show you. Because the answer determines everything else. I'm going to tell you 3 futures. One of them is already happening right now, and there will be no single headline that tells you it started. No breaking news alert, no market crash. Just a slow structural shift that shows up first in quarterly earnings footnotes and trade data appendices before it shows up anywhere you'd actually read. That's the dangerous one. Here are all 3, with probabilities sourced from CSIS Strategic Frameworks, JP Morgan Scenario Analysis, and Oxford University's China Center Assessments. Worst case, 20% probability. The trigger, a Taiwan conflict scenario before 2030. The direct impact on your life, iPhone manufacturing cannot be replicated outside China. Within 5 years, prices rise to between $1,500 and $2,000. EV battery costs increase 60 to 80% because China controls approximately 80% of global lithium processing. A Nasdaq short-term drop of 25 to 35% as supply chain assumptions get repriced overnight. The 2027 to 2028 window is identified by multiple strategic assessments as the highest risk period. I want to be clear, 20% is not low. In risk management terms, a 20% probability of a catastrophic outcome is something you prepare for. Most likely scenario, 60% probability. This is the one that should concern you most precisely because it won't feel like a crisis. No invasion, no single dramatic event, just a slow, structural divergence. The United States maintains its technology lead in Western markets, but China captures 30 to 40% of global South AI and cloud market share over 5 years. US tech companies start reporting weaker forward guidance. Your grocery costs stay elevated at 8 to 12% above pre-tariff levels. Your tech stocks underperform not because of a crash, but because the addressable market just got permanently smaller. This is the scenario where America wins every battle and loses the war and doesn't fully realize it until 2031. Best case, also 20%. A managed separation before end of 2027. Consumer prices stabilize. Tech stocks recover. The bifurcation happens, but on terms both sides can operate within. And I want to be honest about how hard this condition actually is. This outcome requires something that has happened exactly once in modern great power competition. A superpower voluntarily acknowledging mid-competition that it has been fighting the wrong war and restructuring its entire approach. The last clear example was 1973, the United States recognizing that Vietnam was unwinnable. I am not comparing the situations morally or strategically. I am noting the historical data point on how difficult it is for great powers to change what they are fighting for once national credibility is invested in a particular battlefield. The best case is available. History suggests it requires either extraordinary leadership or significant pain to get there. I genuinely hope for the former. So what do you actually do with all of this? I want to be specific because stay informed is not an answer. Be worried is not an answer. Here are 4 concrete things, each one tied directly to a mechanism we've already covered that you can act on this week, not someday. This week. 1. If you have tech stocks or a 401k with tech exposure, look beyond chip manufacturers. Semiconductor equipment companies like ASML and KLA-Tencor profit, regardless of whether China or America wins the fabrication race. Someone has to sell the tools. That business doesn't get sanctioned the same way. 2. Change what you track in the news. Stop reading chip headlines as your signal. Start tracking AI data center deployments in Southeast Asia. Digital yuan adoption rates. Those are the leading indicators of which scenario branch we're moving towards 6 to 12 months before it shows up in earnings reports. 3. Factor the tariff cost into your household budget right now, not as a future risk, but as a present reality. Yale Budget Lab has verified $1,200 to $2,000 per year per household already. That is a mortgage payment in some parts of this country. If you haven't adjusted your budget for that reality, you're making financial decisions on outdated assumptions. 4. If you work in technology, AI, logistics, or supply chain, the bifurcation of the global tech ecosystem is not a threat to your career. It is an opportunity if you position correctly. Skills and knowledge that function across both the American and Chinese technology ecosystems will carry significant premium value in a world that is splitting into 2 parallel systems. Everything I've shown you today comes from public data. The 141-page 15th Five-Year Plan original Chinese language document, the Diplomat's Primary Source Analysis, March 2026. Federal Reserve Board on RMB Internationalization, Oxford University's China Center, Yale Budget Lab on Tariff Costs, Nature Magazine interviews with Chinese scientists, Chatham House, Congressional Research Service. Every claim has a source. Every number has a methodology. Links in the description. And here is what I genuinely do not know. I don't have access to classified intelligence. I don't know the actual yield rates inside SMIC's fabs. I don't know what was said in closed-door meetings between Xi Jinping and Global South leaders. This analysis is built entirely on public data, which means it is incomplete by definition. Factor that in. Here is the core thesis stated as plainly as I can. The chip war is real. The infrastructure war is more consequential. Right now, Washington is fighting one of them. Beijing is fighting both. That asymmetry, not the chip gap, not the GDP slowdown, not the property crash, is the defining variable of the US-China competition for the next decade. And the 15th Five-Year Plan is the clearest signal we have ever had about how Beijing intends to fight it. Next video. Most people think DeepSeek is a story about a cheap Chinese AI that surprised Silicon Valley. It is not. It is a story about one specific export control decision made by one specific US government committee that directly caused the largest single-day market cap loss in stock market history, $596 billion. One decision. I will show you the decision, who made it, what information they had, and what they missed. That video drops in 7 days. If you're not subscribed, you'll miss the second half of everything we covered today, because DeepSeek is where the 15th five-year plan strategy was field-tested for the first time. Subscribe, and if this changed how you read the news, share it with one person who you think needs this lens.